I supported Joe Kabai for 7 years. And I loved him for 7 years. He finally agreed to be with me. But later I found out that the one he liked was the girl he'd grown up with. He has always resented me. Feeling that I was throwing money at him and humiliating him, 10 years into our marriage, he became extremely cold toward me. And eventually he just moved out and started a new family with his childhood sweetheart. But I remained alone in my empty room and died in despair. Back on the day I decided to sponsor him, Joe Kabai's childhood sweetheart threw herself at him and exclaimed excitedly to me, "So what if you're rich? We don't care." I laughed. "You're overthinking it. I'd rather burn this money than give it to you. Chin Nanji. So what if you've got a few bucks? You think having money makes you special. We don't care." Watching Lin Chu throw herself at Joe Kabai, I felt a bit dazed, and our eyes met. 20-year-old Joe Kabai still had a youthful look about him, dressed in a pair of faded jeans. Yet he was strikingly handsome, with a tall, straight posture, chiseled features, and eyes as cold as Starsa presence that made even his clothes seem elegant. I couldn't help but take a step back and had to grab the table behind me to steady myself. How long has it been since I last saw Joe Kabai like this? 10 years. Or 20 years. It's been so long. I can't remember anymore. After all, that was a long time ago. Joe Kabai looked at me as I stepped back and paused for a moment. Lin Chu was still chattering away. But I couldn't hear a thing. Everything before me is exactly the same as in my previous life. That's just how it was back then. He wouldn't let me support him, but I was determined to do it anyway. I've had a crush on Joe Kabai for 7 years. And I know his family isn't well off. His father was a hopeless gambler who, ever since he was a child, would come home drunk after losing all his money and beat him and his mother, unable to bear the torment any longer. Mrs. Joe eventually threw herself into the river and took her own life. From a young age, Joe Kabai supported himself by scavenging for trash and doing odd jobs, and he relied on financial aid to pay for his education. Our paths were never meant to cross. However, since he had always been a top student, our private middle school awarded him a scholarship to boost our college acceptance rate, which is why we ended up attending the same high school. Back then, our circle was full of rich kids, spoiled brats from wealthy families who had no interest in studying. We just drifted through each day aimlessly, waiting to go abroad to get a degree so we could come home and take over the family business. Only Joe Kabai was different. He has a clear goal. He studies hard in class and works part-time after class. Although he had no money, he never felt ashamed of it and always carried himself with dignity. That was when I fell for him. I care about him, so I can't stand to see him suffer. I was young and naive back then, and I always presumptuously tried to force everything I liked onto him. Since he has to work at night and doesn't have time to eat breakfast in the morning, I packed him a lunch from home. Joe Kabai, my housekeeper makes the best wagyu, you have to try it. And there's foie gras, me dad had it flown in specially. It's absolutely delicious. Back then, I was an only child. I was spoiled rotten from a young age. Everyone around me doted on me so much that my head was completely empty. I just want to give him the best. But they completely ignored whether he wanted it or not. The students around her started teasing her. Chin Nanji, what does he know about foie gras? Ha ha ha. I bet he can't even afford chicken liver. I snapped at them. None of your damn business. I didn't notice Joe Kabai's fingers, which had turned pale as he clenched the lunchbox tightly. He paused for a moment, handed the lunchbox back to me, and said coldly, "Thanks for the offer, but I don't need it." "Come on, Joe Kabai," a guy said with a wink. "If you get together with Shinanji, you won't have to work hard for the rest of your life. Go ahead and hook up with her." "Exactly. Then your dad can gamble as much as he wants. And he won't have to dip into your tuition money anymore." Ha ha ha. Everyone burst out laughing. I slammed my fist on the table. "Shut up, all of you." The others didn't dare to laugh anymore. Joe Kabai suddenly stood up and walked out. I ran after him, trying to shove the lunchbox into his hands. "Joe Kabai, don't listen to their nonsense. You'd better eat this, or your body won't be able to handle working tonight." He stopped and spun around. I was stunned. His eyes were filled with nothing but hatred and loathing. Young people always have a terrible memory. I quickly forgot all about that and went back to pestering Zhou Kebai. For his sake. I even started studying hard and went to the same university as him. My dad was over the moon and doubled my allowance. Once he started college, Zhou Kebai became even busier. His application for a scholarship was rejected, and a classmate with family connections snatched up the spot for the financial aid grant. At his lowest point, he could only afford to buy one steamed bun at the cafeteria every day, and would fill up on free soup to stave off hunger. I couldn't stand by and watch, so I offered to help him financially, but he turned me down. He worked 3 jobs a day and eventually collapsed from exhaustion on the street. That's when I finally lost my temper, grabbed him, and insisted on giving him money. Zhou Kebai, why won't you take my money? What on earth are you working yourself to death for? I went to see his homeroom teacher and insisted on paying his tuition. By then, I had matured a bit and knew how to be considerate of his feelings. So whenever we ate, I'd always invite him to join me, and then tell him I couldn't finish it all and ask him to help me eat it. Whenever we go out, I always say I snagged a free coupon and drag him along with me. Gradually, it seemed as though Zhou Kebai and I were growing closer. I supported him financially all the way through graduation. And to make him happy, I even helped pay for his childhood sweetheart's education as well. After graduating, Zhou Kebai started his own business. He's always been a top student, and while he was in school, he developed a game app with some friends. But he kept hitting a wall and couldn't secure any investment no matter what he tried. I couldn't stand seeing him so down, so I just asked my dad to invest in his business. I remember that Zhou Kebai was very quiet that evening. Just as I was leaning against his shoulder and about to fall asleep, he suddenly spoke up. Chin Nanzi, why are you doing this? At the time, I thought he was going to ask, why are you so nice to me? So I replied without a second thought. Because I like you. Zhou Kebai, do you like me? I clung to his arm and asked in a playful, pleading tone. I've been so good to you, and yet you still won't be with me, or just so ungrateful. I was just joking back then, but Zhou Kebai didn't say anything, so I took that as his tacit agreement. And that's how we ended up together. 2 years later, Zhou Kebai and I got married. The wedding was a small affair. Zhou Kebai said he didn't like having too many people, so we invited only a few tables of close relatives and friends. They're all my relatives and friends. Over there, he was all alone. Zhou Kebai remained cold toward me even after we were married. I was so naive back then. I thought that was just the kind of person he was. After all, I'd been chasing after him for so many years, and I figured that as long as I kept being good to him, even a heart of stone would eventually melt. But I never expected him to be so stubborn, because his heart has always belonged to someone else. 3 years into our marriage, our differences had become irreconcilable. I started to find his daily indifference unbearable. So I asked him point blank if he still had feelings for his childhood sweetheart, but he just stared at me coldly, without saying a word. When he was pushed to his limit, he just slammed the door and stormed out. His emotional neglect drove me deeper and deeper into paranoia and madness. As soon as he came home, I would grill him and yell at him. At the height of our argument, I said things without thinking. If I'd known you were such an ungrateful wretch, I should have just gotten a dog, at least it would have wagged its tail at me. His expression turned fierce for a moment, then quickly settled down. He hasn't been home at all since that day. It wasn't until later that I found out he had actually been dating his childhood sweetheart all along. They've found a new home out there, and we had a child. Back then, he had a happy and fulfilling family life, and as I sat alone in my lonely home, all the love in my heart turned into venom steeped in hatred. Zhou Kebai's business venture was a success, and he ended up becoming even richer than my dad. I don't have anything to get back at him with. All I have is my marriage. I've staked my whole life on getting revenge on him, and I'd rather die than divorce him no matter how much money he offers me. He ruined me, and I won't let him off easy. The women he loves can never be anything more than secret mistresses. He and the son of another man will always be nothing more than bastards in the gutter. Joe Kabai wouldn't dare sue me. He's afraid that if our marital dispute becomes public, it will affect the company's stock price. And the other directors wouldn't approve of it either. And so, I spent 10 years with him. Over the past 10 years, no matter how hysterical or wild I got, in the end I even backed down and begged. He never showed any mercy. He never came back to see me. Day after day, I grew thinner and thinner in the grip of despair, and fell seriously ill. He eventually died of a broken heart. Shin Nanji. I snapped back to reality and looked over at Jokabai. A deep, searing hatred welled up from every fiber of my being. My heart felt as if it were about to burst, and for a moment I could barely stand. Now that I'm dead, he's finally gotten his wish, hasn't he? Perhaps the way he treated me was meant to wear me down and kill me quickly. I still remember that right before I died, my medication was suddenly switched. When I asked the housekeeper about it, he simply said they had switched to a milder medication. I didn't think anything of it. However, not long after I started taking the medicine, my health began to deteriorate, and eventually I couldn't even sit up. Before long, I kicked the bucket. It must be him. Who else could it be but him? He hates me so much he wishes I'd die right now. He wanted to help Lin Chu rise to power. How cruel. I looked at Jokabai and forced myself to suppress the urge to rush over and kill him. I'm so angry. I don't think I've done anything wrong by Jokabai, except for being immature when I was young and not being considerate enough of his feelings. I never even pressured him to get married. I even asked him if he was willing. If not, I could wait a little longer. Yet he hates me so much. Lin Chu was yelling at me just like he did in his previous life. Shin Nanji, do you think having money makes you so great? What gives you the right to treat people this way? I looked at her. She was dressed in a white dress, her frame delicate, like a little white flower. This is the woman Jokabai loved, the one he would have killed me to help ascend to power. It was the same in my past life. Jokabai and I were having a calm conversation. I told him that if he felt uncomfortable, he could pay me back once he started earning money. I'd just consider it a loan. But Lin Chu suddenly accused me of throwing money at people and said I had insulted Jokabai. It was only later, during an argument with Jokabai, that I gradually came to understand. It turns out he'd always thought I was throwing money at him and humiliating him. Suddenly, I found it all quite ridiculous, seeing how protective Lin Chu was of his own. I smiled. You're overthinking it. I'd rather burn this money than give it to you. Jokabai's face turned pale. Lin Chu looked blank for a moment. What did you say? I smiled. Don't you think that my financial support is an insult to you? We're all classmates. How could I treat you like that? Never mind. Then, you should just go back to your part-time jobs. Lin Chu's family situation is similar to Jokabai's. Her father ran off with the money he owed, and her mother, who worked to pay for her education, developed a host of health problems and is now bedridden, perhaps because they were in similar situations. She and Jokabai had always gotten along well, and she was always by his side. Whenever Jokabai and I went out, she would always pester him to let her come along. Sometimes when I don't want to, she'll hide behind him and ask me pitifully, Nanji, do you think I'm too poor and don't want to be friends with me? Before I could say a word, Jokabai would shield her behind him and say in a deep voice, if you don't think we're a good match, then don't go. I have no choice but to take her with me. She was there during dinner. She would tilt her head and look at the lobster on her plate, saying, do you eat such good food every day? Then, in a tone that was both wistful and envious, we really are from different worlds. On several occasions, Jokabai and I were having a perfectly fine conversation when she would suddenly say something like that, and the smile would vanish from her face, and she would stop talking to me. At first, I thought she was just being thoughtless. It wasn't until later, when I was walking with Jokabai and suddenly turned to say something to him, that I caught her looking at me. Lin Chu's face was expressionless, but his eyes were filled with nothing but malice and hatred. When she saw me turn around, she was caught off guard and quickly forced a smile. Yet a chill ran down my spine. It was only then that it suddenly dawned on me. She hates me. Or rather, she hates me, actually. When Zhou Kebai and I first got married, we did have a brief period of harmony. By then, his company was up and running and had landed its first contract. After the victory party, he wrapped his arms around me, tipsy as he was, and said with a smile, "Honey, whatever you want. I'll buy it for you." I felt sorry for him because he worked so hard to make a living. So I hugged him, feeling completely satisfied. "No, thanks. I'm just happy you thought of me." But he wouldn't let it go and said defiantly, "A husband earns money so his wife can spend it. I'll buy you a bag. What kind do you like?" Even as he fell asleep, he was still muttering to himself, "Nanji, I have money now. You don't have to suffer along with me." Sure enough, he bought me a bag the very next day. But before I could say a word, Lin Chu followed right behind me. She looked at the bag in my hand, and her expression suddenly turned a bit strange. She immediately snatched the bag from my hands and said to Zhou Kebai with a smile, "Oh my. I remember Sister Nanji had this bag back when she was in college. It was a gift from a guy who had a crush on her at the time. She even said at the time that it was too cheap to carry out. To be honest, I've long since forgotten whether that ever happened." However, Zhou Kebai's expression suddenly turned grim. He then picked up the bag and walked out the door with a blank expression on his face. After that, he started to act cold toward me. By the time they said goodbye, Lin Chu was already carrying that bag. A smile played on her lips as she feigned indifference and said, "Nanji, Kebai gave me this bag. You're not mad, are you?" Of course I refused. I told her to give me my bag back. A look of panic spread across her face, and with tears in her eyes, she asked me, "You already have so many bags. Why do you have to fight me over this one? You have so many of them, but I only have this one." Zhou Kebai pulled me away with a grim expression. "Let go. If you don't care about it, why are you fighting with her over it? Or is it that you just like things you have to fight for?" I was full of myself back then and couldn't stand being treated that way. So we had a huge fight and parted on bad terms. It wasn't until later that I realized what Lin Chu was talking about wasn't a bag at all. She was clearly talking about Zhou Kebai. She thinks I stole him away from her, which is why she hates me so much. "Nanji," Zhou Kebai said, grabbing me as if he'd suddenly panicked. "Wait a minute." I turned around, but when I saw the look on his face, I froze for a moment. Emotions were churning beneath the surface in his eyes, as if something were about to burst forth at any moment. Even his voice trembled slightly. "No. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Chin Nanzi, why aren't you supporting me anymore? Don't you like me very much?" I was startled by his madness. What's wrong with Zhou Kebai? Has he lost his mind? Are you still upset that I spoke to Lin Chu in a harsh tone? But in my past life, I hadn't won him over yet at this point. He was always very cold toward me and never smiled. Is he losing his mind? I tried to pull my hand away. Let go. But he only pressed harder, his eyes even turning a little red. "Chin Nanji, don't you like me anymore? You don't want me anymore?" This really scared me. When had Zhou Kebai ever said something like that to me? I stared at him in surprise. "Zhou Kebai, are you out of your mind or something?" But he said nothing. He just stared straight at me without blinking, his expression obsessive and frenzied. That really got my blood boiling. After what he did to me in our last life, how dare he glare at me now? Don't you think it's humiliating for me to support you, Zhou Kebai? Or are you just putting on a show so I'll have to beg you living off others' generosity? Lin Chu opened his mouth, seemingly surprised that I would speak to Zhou Kebai like that. Come to think of it, this was exactly when I loved him the most in my past life. I chose my words carefully, afraid of hurting his pride. But I don't care anymore. Zhou Kebai, who do you think you are? I said with contempt, heartless and ungrateful, repaying kindness with ingratitude. I really wonder how I ever fell for someone like that. Surprisingly, Zhou Kebai didn't get angry. Instead, all the color drained from his face, leaving him deathly pale. I shook off his hand and walked away without looking back. There's 200,000 yuan on the card I gave Zhou Kebai, enough to cover his tuition and living expenses. I took the card and went straight to the mall. If I give him the money, I'll just end up with a whole mess of trouble. I'd rather buy a few more handbags. Apart from that one bag, Zhou Kebai never gave me anything else in my previous life. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. He just can't seem to remember. Or maybe they just don't care. On the contrary, Lin Chu suddenly transformed into a wealthy socialite. She went on a shopping spree with Zhou Kebai's money, spending hundreds of thousands at a time on handbags, watches, and clothes. Every time she buys something, she comes over to show it off to me. Nanji. Kebai brought this back for me all the way from Paris. What did he bring you? No way. She covered her mouth and giggled. I didn't bring you anything, did I? Then I got into a huge fight with Zhou Kebai, and our relationship got even worse. Come to think of it, I'm so rich, why would I care about things men buy for me? If there's something I want to buy, I can totally buy it myself. I spent those 200,000 on 4 bags, and I spent another 100,000 on top of that. On the way back to school, maybe it was just a case of running into the wrong people at the wrong time. I spotted Lin Chu and Zhou Kebai the moment I got off the bus. When she saw the luxury shopping bags I was carrying, her expression changed instantly, and she couldn't hide her envy and resentment. At that time, Zhou Kebai was penniless, and she was no better off. The white dress she was wearing was so worn from washing that the fabric had frayed, even though she had gone to great lengths to trim the loose threads and iron it flat. A quick glance was enough to tell it was a cheap knockoff from a street vendor. Nanji, you're really rich. I've noticed that Lin Chu can change his tune pretty quickly. Just a moment ago, he was calling me Shenanzi and berating me, saying that having a few stinking bucks didn't make me any better. You can call me Sister Nanji from now on. She stared intently at the Chanel bag in my hand, her fingers clenched tightly. Chanel bags are pretty expensive, aren't they? One of those is worth several years' worth of our tuition. She leaned in close to Zhou Kebai and remarked, almost as if by chance, we really are from different worlds. Whenever she used to say that, I would always argue with her. I'm not very articulate, so the more I talk, the more upset Zhou Kebai gets. Now fuck off. I smiled faintly. Looks like you're not just prudery, not very bright either. Did you just figure that out now? I live in a 300 square meter open plan apartment in the city center, while you live in a rundown 30 square meter apartment on the outskirts. Of course, we're from completely different worlds. Lin Chu's face turned pale, and his features twisted for a moment. I walked over to her and said, enunciating each word clearly, Lin Chu, you and I will never belong to the same world. Just die of jealousy. To be frank, she quickly caught on and was about to play the victim with Zhou Kebai. I snorted. What else do you do besides hide behind men? You're just like a stink bug in a gutter. Don't even bother looking for Zhou Kebai. You two are two of a kind, both equally disgusting. After giving that couple a piece of my mind that day, I went home feeling pretty happy. It's not that I don't want to get back at them. I've never forgotten what they did to me in my past life. But the thing is, since the incident involving the drugging hasn't actually happened yet, I have no evidence. Besides, I don't want to waste my life on this kind of crap. It was painful enough to be tormented my whole life in my past life. For the rest of my life, I want nothing to do with those two, whether they're doing well or not. It's none of my business anymore. A new life I want to start over. However, even though I wanted to keep my distance from them, the two of them just wouldn't leave me alone. A few days later, my friend sought me out specifically and said with a smirk, you didn't give Zhou Kebai and Lin Chu any money, and now they're in a terrible bind. They can't even afford their tuition. I heard Zhou Kebai's been working like crazy lately. The other day, Lin Chu wanted to buy a new dress, but it was only 80 yuan. She tried using WeChat Pay, Alipay, and her credit card, but couldn't quite cover it. She even had to sell that iPhone you bought her just to barely scrape together the tuition money. It took me a while to remember. But before this, in my previous life, I saw that Joe Kabai's phone was so outdated, so I gave him the latest iPhone. However, the very next day, I saw that phone in Lin Chu's hands. I lowered my gaze and said sarcastically, "Really? That's pretty poor." Then, but before I could take 2 steps, Lin Chu stopped me. She looked agitated and grabbed my arm, saying angrily, "Shin Nanji, why don't you sponsor Kabai? Do you realize he has the highest GPA in his major? If his education is derailed because of tuition, can you take responsibility for that?" At first I was taken aback, but then I was so angry I actually started laughing. Later on in my previous life, I finally figured out what these people were really like. He wants other people's money but can't bring himself to ask for it. So he just grumbles under his breath while he eats. That is the height of shamelessness. Whether he comes in first or not, what's it to me? I shrugged. It's not like I'm his dad. How can you say that? As classmates who knew us gathered around, Lin Chu got even more worked up. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked every bit the innocent little flower refusing to bow to evil forces. "One of your bags is worth more than our tuition for several years. What's wrong with you sponsoring us? Or are you just that selfish you'd rather waste your money than use it to help those in need?" She probably thinks everyone is like Joe Kabai and will be brainwashed by her shameless rhetoric. Before I could say anything, my friend spoke up. Her family background is similar to mine, but she has a much worse temper than I do, she said with a cold laugh, turning to Lin Chu and saying, "Which mental institution left its doors unlocked and let an idiot like you out? If you want money, you can go beg. Or, if that doesn't work, you can sell yourself. Sure. You're a bit ugly, but at 80 a pop, someone's bound to take you. 10 times that is 800, and in 100 times, you'll have your tuition covered, won't you? You've got arms, legs, kidneys, and genitals. Why do you have to stick your big face out there and beg people for money? Do you think they're your parents?" Lin Chu usually plays the green tea card, but she'd never seen anyone so reckless as to start cursing right out of the blue. For a moment, she was so stunned by the tirade that she couldn't get a word out. The other students also chimed in. "Yeah, if you don't have money, you can apply for financial aid. You shouldn't be so rude when asking people for money. You're just shameless. You deserve to be broke." Lin Chu took a step back, her eyes widening in disbelief. I gave a cold laugh. I treat my classmates to bubble tea all the time, and I'm always willing to pick up the tab when we go out to eat. So of course they take my side. Come to think of it, what else does Lin Chu have besides Joe Kabai? She hasn't been able to win me over in a single way. If I hadn't been so obsessed with Joe Kabai in my previous life, someone like her wouldn't even have crossed my path. Just then, Joe Kabai suddenly showed up. To be honest, Lin Chu leaned in as if she'd found a savior, tears welling up in her eyes. "I just asked Shinanji to help you out a little. She has enough money to buy all those bags. Yet she wouldn't help you. I don't know what I did to offend her, but she cursed at me so viciously. Sister Nanji," she said, her expression changing instantly as tears welled up in her eyes. "I know you look down on me, but I'm only doing this for Kubai's sake. He's so wonderful." I was absolutely fed up. Lin Chu was like a toad that had jumped onto someone's food it didn't bite, but it was still a nuisance. The worst part is, she's like a shadow that just won't go away. I can't seem to shake her off. Joe Kabai frowned slightly. "Did you yell at her?" I couldn't help but let out a sarcastic chuckle. Just as I thought. He's always like that. As soon as Lin Chu played the victim, he immediately scolded me without hearing my side of the story. In the past, every time this happened, I'd get so angry and upset that I'd storm off and argue with him, then go back to my room and cry in secret. But not anymore. I lifted my eyelids and looked at Joe Kabai. Yeah, she's right. I did yell at her. However, to my surprise, Joe Kabai didn't get angry at all. He lowered his head and spoke in a gentle, almost ingratiating tone. "She must have done something wrong to upset you. He then turned his head and said to Lin Chu in a calm tone, Nanji isn't the unreasonable type. Why don't you just apologize to her? I was speechless. For a moment, I actually thought I hadn't woken up yet. Lin Chu was stunned as well. It was a long time before her lips trembled slightly. Kabai. What did you say? Zhou Kabai's face turned pale. I told you to apologize. Lin Chu's eyes welled up with tears, and she took a step back in disbelief. She clenched her teeth and said, her voice choked with tears, how could you do that? I was completely baffled. 2. Zhou Kabai actually made Lin Chu, the apple of his eye, apologize to Mei as he lost his mind. A fleeting thought crossed my mind. Could it be that he's been reborn too? But I quickly dismissed the idea. That's impossible. In my past life, Zhou Kabai hated me so much that he even poisoned me to death. If he were to be reborn, he'd definitely stay far away from me right away. He must have some other scheme up his sleeve. I put some distance between us and watched him warily. Zhou Kabai looked as if my gaze had stabbed him. He looked at me with a wounded expression. Nanji. I know I was wrong before. Will you forgive me? Don't you like me? Should we get together? I'll make up for everything I've done to you in the past. The more he spoke, the more agitated he became. By the end, he was staring intently at me, as if I were a long-lost treasure he'd finally found again, his voice even breaking slightly. That's ridiculous. I couldn't help but clench my fists. In my past life, I searched tirelessly and devoted my entire life to him, all for just those few words. It's just a shame that, right up until the end, I never once heard him say he loved me. I really did curse and humiliate him just as he said I would. Yet he claims he likes me now. Then what was the point of all I sacrificed in my past life? I let out a sarcastic smile and said with disgust, will you be with me? Zhou Kabai. Who do you think you are? How dare you even think of being with me? One piece of my clothing is worth 3 years of your wages. You're way too full of yourself. What gives you the right to be with me? Doesn't he think I humiliated him? Then let him taste some real humiliation. Sure enough, Zhou Kabai's face turned pale. I don't have any money right now, he said urgently, but please wait for me. Okay, I'll have money someday. He wasn't wrong about that. They did end up becoming quite wealthy. But what does that have to do with me? The hatred and loathing in my heart were almost too much for me to bear. She looked at him with contempt and said, Zhou Kabai, even if every man on earth were to die, I would never be with you. After I left that day, Zhou Kabai kept staring at me, looking completely dazed. He looked absolutely pitiful. His shoulders slumped, standing there as if his very soul had been sucked out of him. All I could do was sneer inwardly. I have no idea what Zhou Kabai is up to, whether he suddenly came to his senses or lost his mind. It doesn't matter. Qin Nanji, who had loved him with all her heart, had died in her previous life. All I feel for him in this life is hatred. Without my financial support, Zhou Kabai and Lin Chu would have had an even harder life than they did in their previous lives. Zhou Kabai's software didn't sell, and his attempt to start his own business also failed. I heard they're so broke they're about to start selling their blood. However, none of that is my concern anymore. Early the next morning, my phone rang. I picked up my phone, and the screen displayed a name. Chen Luo. This is someone who used to be my friend. I was a little dazed. As for me, it's been over a decade since I last saw those names. Back when I was with Zhou Kabai, he didn't like my friends from wealthy families and always forbade me from seeing them. Gradually, I drifted apart from them. This Chen Luo is the guy Lin Chu mentioned who gave me the bag. Our families have been friends for generations, and we've gotten along well since we were kids. When he answered the phone, his excited voice came through the receiver. Nanji, I heard you gave that kid Zhou Kabai a piece of your mind. Before I could say a word, he exclaimed excitedly, we should have taught him a lesson a long time ago. That asshole lives off you and tries to manipulate you. We didn't dare say anything before. But you've finally come to your senses. I smiled slightly. What's up? We're getting together tonight, same place as always. 8 p. You have to be there. After hanging up, I thought about it for a long time before I remembered that the old place was a bar we used to frequent. My childhood friends and I often hang out together. It's just that since I started dating Zhou Kebai, I haven't been going out much. I used to be a hothead, but for love, I've completely sheathed my claws and fangs. I stopped going to shopping malls and started exploring street stalls and markets for the first time. I no longer wear those luxury items. Instead, I carefully pick out clothes that cost just a few dozen yuan. Also that Zhou Kebai won't frown when I stand beside him. I didn't dare to eat at the restaurant I used to frequent, and on the rare occasions I did go out to eat, I would just go with him to a Shaoxing snack bar for a serving of xiaomai. I've turned myself into a timid, cautious person. I just wish he liked me a little more. I used to love him with all my heart. When we got to the bar that evening, Chen Luo was in high spirits and kept urging me to drink. I didn't refuse. I enjoyed this long-awaited sense of relaxation. This group of friends is actually really great. Especially Chen Luo. When I got married, he even told me that if I ever felt wronged, I should go to him, and he'd help me teach Zhou Kebai a lesson. He actually went to see Zhou Kebai later. I was just pregnant at the time. The baby was the result of an accident that happened one night when Zhou Kebai came home drunk. I was overjoyed, thinking that having a child would win him back. But then Lin Chu found out I was pregnant. She deliberately came over to provoke me, and just as I'd had enough and was about to slap her, Zhou Kebai walked in. He grabbed my wrist and instinctively pushed me away. He pushed me down, and I hit my stomach on the corner of the table. I started bleeding immediately and was rushed to the hospital. I was young and in good health back then, not like later on, when I was completely worn out, and in the end, I managed to save the baby. Then Lin Chu wouldn't let it go. She came to my house every day to yell at me, and would even call me at 2 or 3 in the morning just to make me hear her and Zhou Kebai getting intimate. Zhou Kebai gasped for breath and called out to her softly, "Relax." My stomach was churning, so I covered my mouth and ran to the bathroom, where I threw up until I felt like the world was spinning. I vomited until tears mixed with stomach acid gushed out, and by the end, I was shivering uncontrollably. Looking up, the woman in the mirror was so pale she looked as if she might collapse at any moment. Only her lifeless eyes were bloodshot, with tears streaming down his face. That day, I lost that child completely. The doctor told me to get plenty of rest and avoid getting too worked up. But I can't help it. After learning that the child had died, Zhou Kebai was silent for a long time, saying only one thing: "We'll have more children in the future." But I didn't have any more children. He and Lin Chu did end up having a child. Fun for the whole family. When Chen Luo found out about this, he went over to Zhou Kebai's place and beat the crap out of him. If I hadn't pulled him back at the last minute, he would have beaten Zhou Kebai to death. I grabbed him. His eyes were red, and he shouted frantically at Zhou Kebai. "What did you say when we got married? You said you'd treat her well. She used to be such a cheerful person. How the hell could you have ruined her like this?" Zhou Kebai didn't fight back that time. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked down, saying nothing. "What are you thinking about?" Chen Luo gave me a nudge. "Let's have a drink." I clinked glasses with him and downed it in one gulp. After a few rounds of drinks, Chen Luo was already feeling the effects. His face flushed red as he leaned in close and whispered to me, "You really don't like Zhou Kebai." I glanced at him, and he immediately looked away, his ears turning pink. I found it a little amusing. Chen Luo likes me. I know that. But in my past life, I had eyes only for Zhou Kebai. And in the end, I even fell out with him because of him. But even when Zhou Kebai treats me badly, he still immediately steps in to defend me. If I were to look for someone in this lifetime, I hope to find someone just like him. It's only now that I realize love can't solve every problem. Zhou Kebai and I come from different backgrounds, received different educations, and have different circumstances. We're not a good match. Growing up in a family like that, he put up his defenses early on, becoming sharp and sensitive, yet insecure and aloof. I was raised in the lap of luxury from a young age. My family gave me the confidence to give up everything to love someone, and that is precisely what led to my tragedy. I thought that love alone was enough to sustain me. Little did they know that a man like Zhou Kebai couldn't be swayed by mere enthusiasm. I nodded. Yeah. I was blind before. Chen Luo lowered his head, slowly moved closer to me, and whispered, "Well, look at me." Before he could finish speaking, someone suddenly grabbed my wrist and pulled me to my feet. I startled and turned around, only to be met by Zhou Kebai's face, which looked terrifyingly grim. He lowered his gaze, his body tense, his calm voice concealing emotions I couldn't fathom. "Come with me." He practically dragged me out the door. "Let go." I shoved him away with all my might. "Are you crazy?" But Zhou Kebai held me in a death grip. His strength was terrifying. Ever since he was reborn, his attitude toward me has been so docile it borders on fawning. At that moment, his eyes were dark and intense, and his face was completely expressionless, which was somewhat frightening. He said hoarsely, "Qin Nanji, what did you just say?" I froze for a moment, then gritted my teeth and said, "I said I don't like you anymore. I must have been blind before." "Don't you like me anymore?" Zhou Kebai gave a strange chuckle. He immediately yanked me toward him, staring intently at me. His voice as cold as if it had been chilled with ice shards. "Say that again." For a moment, I was actually taken aback by him. "Was everything you said before that you liked me, that you wanted to be with me, that you'd never leave me a lie?" He looked frantic. But I froze. "No. I've never said those words before in my life. Those were clearly words I said to him before we got married in my past life." My whole body began to shake uncontrollably. How on earth did he know? Zhou Kebai quickly realized he had said the wrong thing and instinctively took a step back. I whispered, "Zhou Kebai, you're back too, aren't you?" He remained silent. The midnight wind howled past me, sweeping the fallen leaves across the ground and carrying with it a sense of desolation. Occasionally a car would drive past, its headlights flashing briefly before fading into the gloom. "Zhou Kebai." I forced a grim smile. "How dare you?" He actually came back to life too, after the way he treated me in our past life. How dare he say such things to me now? That's what I said and did in my past life. But what was the result? I won't rest in peace. I've finally come to terms with things in this life, and I want to live it well. But he actually reopened my wounds and told me mockingly that I would never be able to escape those miserable days. Zhou Kebai was a little flustered. "Nanji, let me explain. I've come back to life too. But now I've figured it out. I was such a jerk in my past life. I didn't realize I'd fallen in love with you long ago. Can I make it up to you from now on?" Smack. Zhou Kebai turned his head away. I spoke slowly and deliberately. "Zhou Kebai. How dare you? How dare he hurt me like that and then casually tell me he'd fallen in love with me long ago?" That slap vented all the hatred in my heart. I hit him with all my might. A cut appeared at the corner of his mouth, oozing blood, but he merely wiped it away casually. His tone calm. "Is that enough?" "If that doesn't satisfy you," he said, grabbing my hand and pressing it against his face, "slap me a few more times." Even though he was speaking harshly, his eyes suddenly welled up with tears, and they began to fall freely. I was a little shocked. Zhou Kebai has never cried in front of me. During the hardest time of his life, his father gambled away the tuition money he had painstakingly saved, and when he came home, he beat him up. The next day, when he went to school covered in bruises, he didn't cry. He worked 3 jobs a day and was so hungry and exhausted that he fainted several times. But he didn't cry even then. At one point, I thought this person was naturally cold-hearted. I never expected him to actually cry in front of me. Zhou Kebai's tears washed away the blood at the corner of his mouth. His disheveled appearance seemed overwhelming, and he hunched over as he pleaded, "Nanji, come back. If you hate me, you can go ahead and kill me. Just don't leave me. I'm going crazy." "Zhou Kebai, did you hit your head on a door or something? What's wrong with you?" He lowered his head and said in a trembling voice, I was so insecure. Back then, I was completely on my guard, convinced that everyone was out to hurt me. I don't dare to like you, and I don't dare to believe that you really like me. I'm afraid that after I accept your feelings with all my heart, you'll suddenly tell me one day that I'm not good enough for you. And that you were just playing around. Shin Nanji. I'm an idiot. I deserve to die. You can hit me or yell at me, don't care. I'm begging you. Please come back. He wailed as if he were trying to vent all the pent-up emotions he had been holding back. You have no idea how I got by all those years after you left. I couldn't hold back any longer and let out a cold laugh. Joe Kabai. Isn't Lin Chu the one you love? In our past life, didn't you drug me and poison me to death just for Lin Chu's sake? Drugging her. Joe Kabai paused. What do you mean, drugging? Are you still pretending not to know? I clung tightly to the railing by the roadside. Otherwise, I couldn't guarantee I wouldn't slap him again. Someone tampered with my medicine later on. I was clearly getting better at first. But the more I took it, the worse I felt. And in the end, I bit down hard on my tongue, and a bitter taste spread throughout my mouth. The man I loved killed me for another woman. Even just saying it one more time is agonizing for me. I didn't. Joe Kabai exclaimed urgently. I never did. I even told the butler to take good care of you. How could I possibly kill you? We exchanged a glance and saw the same realization in each other's eyes. If it wasn't him, then the only other person I could have come into contact with was the butler, who also wanted me dead. That leaves only Lin Chu. So it turns out it was Lin Chu who killed me. I felt a mix of emotions, but it wasn't hard to accept. He's dead anyway. Does it really matter who killed him? Even if it wasn't Joe Kabai, Lin Chu killed me for his sake, so he can't be held blameless. I felt a bit disheartened, and an indescribable weariness spread through my whole body. Love. Then, so be it. I'm really tired. All I want to do in this life is stay far away from him and live my life in peace. The autumn rain came out of nowhere, with raindrops pounding down on the ground. Joe Kabai stood there in the rain, looking a complete mess. His face streaked with what he couldn't tell if it was rain or tears. Nanji, please. What about Lin Chu? I asked, my face expressionless. You two already had a child in your past life. What do you say to that? Joe Kabai was speechless. After a long pause, he said with difficulty, she got me drunk. It only happened that one time. I let out a sarcastic laugh and said nothing. Joe Kabai bowed his head even lower. From start to finish, you're the only one I've ever loved. I've never liked Lin Chu. He continued. Just then, a woman's voice suddenly rang out from the darkness on the street. Then what am I? Lin Chu stepped out of the shadows. She was still wearing that old white dress, which was soaked by the rain and clinging tightly to her body. Joe Kabai. Her expression was blank, but her eyes flashed with madness. You like her. So what about me? What does it matter that I've been by your side all these years? Joe Kabai clenched his fists tightly, and the look in his eyes toward her no longer held his usual tenderness, only hatred remained. It seems Lin Chu hasn't been reborn. He's still the same Lin Chu from his previous life. She hasn't poisoned me yet, so I don't even have a chance to get back at her. Joe Kabai understood, but said nothing. Lin Chu paused, startled. You hate me, Joe Kabai. You actually hate me. If you hadn't been constantly stirring up trouble between Nanji and me, we wouldn't have ended up like this. His tone was icy. Me stirring things up. Lin Chu laughed. Joe Kabai, she said, deciding to drop the pretense. If you weren't so insecure yet so full of yourself, how could I have possibly manipulated you? You're the one with a dark mind. You want her, but you're afraid, and now you're blaming it all on me. Veins bulged on Joe Kabai's forehead. Chin Nanzi. Lin Chu tilted her head, her expression one of innocent puzzlement, as if she were merely asking a trivial question. You already have everything, so why are you trying to steal Joe Kabai from me? She didn't seem to need my answer. She just kept talking to herself. You come from a good family, you're good looking, and everyone fawns over you, loves you, and spoils you. They'll bring you exactly what you want without you even having to ask. So many people like you, why are you still trying to steal Jokubai from me? Her voice trembled slightly as she clenched her teeth. He's all I have. Why? When he's the only person I have. Do you have to take him away from me? You already have so much. I said calmly. Jokubai is a person. Who he falls for is his choice. And I can't force him. Besides, I've never won. I lost completely. Is that so? Lin Chu stepped closer to me, and only then did I notice that she had been keeping one hand behind her back the whole time. A sense of foreboding suddenly washed over me, just as I was about to step back. She suddenly drew a dagger and lunged at me. Go to hell. Her face contorted. Her expression frenzied. As long as you're dead, Jokubai will be mine again. Shin Nanzi. How dare you be so happy? You deserve to die. She was standing too close. I didn't have time to dodge. And my dilated pupils reflected her bloodshot eyes. Just then, a tremendous force suddenly shoved me aside. The sound of the blade piercing the flesh was drowned out by the rain. Lin Chu stared blankly at Jokubai standing before him. Her fingers began to tremble as she clutched the dagger. And she said frantically, "To be frank." I stumbled and turned around. The knife had already sunk deep into Jokubai's abdomen. The blood seeping out was washed by the rain into a pale pink hue. He didn't seem to notice. He just smiled at me. I'm just glad you're okay. By the time they arrived at the hospital, Jokubai had already fallen into a deep coma. He lost a lot of blood and was rushed straight to the ICU for emergency treatment. Lin Chu was also taken away by the police who had arrived on the scene. It wasn't until the third day that Jokubai woke up. I walked into the ward, looked at him, and felt as if 1,000 words were stuck in my throat. Yet I couldn't say a single one. He looked very weak, his face as pale as paper, yet he still managed to force a smile. Nanji. You're okay. I have mixed feelings. Why did you take that blow for me? He lowered his eyelashes. I don't know either. I just don't want you to get hurt. Lin Chu's blow was aimed straight at my heart. Fortunately, Jokubai was tall, so he wasn't seriously injured. What are you going to do? I suddenly asked. Jokubai quickly caught on to what I meant and gave a wry smile. Just do what needs to be done and tell it like it is. That was your wife in your past life. The one who bore your children. I sat down against the other bed. He whispered. But she killed you. I remained silent. Jokubai coughed a few times, his face contorting with pain for a moment. Then he said hoarsely, Nanji. I really know I was wrong. I was so wrong before. If I were to say. His voice choked up, and his lips trembled uncontrollably. If I could change, would you be willing to? No. I interrupted him. You saved my life, but in our past life, I died because of you. So we're even at best. Even if you took a knife for me, it doesn't erase the pain you caused me. His eyes welled up, and he clenched his jaw tightly to hold back his sobs. But Nanji, you once said I would always love you. I suddenly felt a bit tired and gave a wry smile. Jokubai. Love is something that can run out. It took you 10 years to wear away my love. Bit by bit. Jokubai was deathly pale and looked completely at a loss. Shin Nanzi, you can't do this. You were the one who said you loved me first. Before turning to leave. I glanced back one last time. Jokubai had lost a lot of weight. His hospital gown hung loosely on him. His eyes and brows are still those of the boy I once loved. But my soul has already grown old. Maybe we were meant to be, but the timing wasn't right. But now, I said softly. Jokubai, I really don't love you anymore. Even after I left the ward, I could still hear him wailing in despair. But Shinanji, what am I supposed to do then? Why did I come back here? Was it just to hear you say you don't love me anymore? I might as well have died in my last life. I lowered my head, my eyes feeling dry. I can't cry anymore, because those tears had long since dried up in my past life. I strode away, leaving their wails behind me. In the end, I couldn't hear a thing. Jokubai did not cover for Lin Chu. She was sentenced to 7 years in prison for attempted murder. The school expelled her as well. I heard her mother couldn't handle the blow and jumped to her death. I didn't go to the trial that day. Actually, I've come to understand, at least to some extent, why Lin Chu hates me so much. It wasn't so much for Zhou Kebai's sake as it was because she was jealous of me. She's jealous that I have everything. So she's doing everything she can to steal Zhou Kebai away from me to prove that she can beat me too. When she realized she had lost even Zhou Kebai, she completely lost her mind. I heard she completely lost her mind after learning of her mother's death. She was out of her mind and even hurled insults at the judge during the sentencing. Of course, I had someone pass the news of his death on to her. I also spoke to my dad and asked him to have someone in prison look after Lin Chu. I've never forgotten what happened in my past life when I drugged someone. She'll have to pay me back eventually. 3 years later, Chen Luo and I got married. The Chen Luo family placed great importance on the wedding, throwing a lavish banquet and inviting all the city's prominent figures. It was an extremely grand occasion. Just as we were about to go on stage, his secretary suddenly came running over, holding a red envelope. There's nothing written on it. Mr. Chen, there's a check for 2 million yuan inside this red envelope. I've verified that it's genuine, but there's no name on it. He frowned and said, "What should we do?" Chen Luo and I exchanged a glance. We both knew who had given it to us. Zhou Kebai was indeed capable. Even after his first business venture failed, he quickly bounced back and eventually succeeded. He smiled. Sure, if someone's practically begging to give me money, why not take it? Just then, my phone suddenly rang. It's a text message, an unknown number, with just a single sentence and no context. If he doesn't treat you well, come back. I'll always be waiting for you. Chen Luo snorted derisively. Well, let him wait, won't be waiting in his next life either. I deleted the text message right in front of him and blocked the number while I was at it. Let's go, I said, linking my arm through his and smiling gently. Everyone's waiting for us. Those sad, tearful nights will eventually pass, and I will never look back.